chair recognizes the senator from Sioux, Senator Jay Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank the governor for supporting this bill and Senate leadership for bringing it to the floor for open debate and voting. Like a house, an argument is only as good as its foundation. We have heard in opposition to this bill appeals to emotion, calls for fairness, and references to playing politics. But underneath these seemingly strong arguments is a weak and false foundation. The foundational argument against the bill is that trans girls are girls and trans women are women. However, this argument is not true. Trans girls are boys, not girls. Trans women are men, not women. No matter how many times we hear 2 + 2 = 5, 2 + 2 does not equal 5 and will never equal 5. This is a reference to George Orwell's book, 1984. The thought of the main character, Winston Smith, is described early in the story. Quote, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. His heart sank as he thought of the enormous power arrayed against him. Truisms are true. Hold on to that. The solid world exists. Its laws do not change. Stones are hard. Water is wet." He wrote, "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. Toward the end of the book, a party leader, O'Brien, is speaking to Winston. He says, quote, "You believe that reality is something objective, external, existing in its own right. But I tell you, Winston, that reality is not external. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else." When O'Brien holds up 4 fingers, he insists that Winston ignore his own eyes and say that he's holding up 5 because the party says so. This bill is not about hatred or discrimination. It is about keeping ourselves in alignment with reality. It is about protecting the integrity of female sports in the state of Iowa. It simply says, in regard to a non-co-ed team context, that girls should be competing against other girls in K-12 athletics, and women should be competing against other women in college athletics. A decade or 2 ago, I'm willing to bet that every person in this chamber would have voted for such a bill. It would not have been controversial. It would have been common sense. So what's changed? T for transgender was grafted onto the LGB gay rights movement, and it gradually gained traction. Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn Jenner in 2015. Gender identity disorder was politicized, and the resulting cause was eventually embraced by one of the 2 major political parties in our country. The corporate media and big business in general climbed on the bandwagon, as has the educational establishment. There are many contradictions when it comes to wokeness. Body shaming is harmful, yet being born into the wrong body is a concept we're encouraged to believe. Cultural appropriation is wrong, yet gender appropriation is good. The most principled and consistent feminists oppose the transgender movement for good reason. It represents a systematic erasure of women, the language used to describe them, the unique experiences only they can have, and the rights for which they have fought so hard through the years in the face of sexism and discrimination. Some of the most eloquent critics of transgender ideology are lesbian women. They are derided as TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists, in the United States and in the UK. Now, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, isn't really a TERF, but she is somebody who recognizes the threat that transgender ideology poses to women. Rowling writes, "Woman is not a costume. Woman is not an idea in a man's head. Woman is not a pink brain, a liking for Jimmy Choos, or any of the other sexist ideas now somehow touted as progressive. Moreover, the inclusive language that calls female people menstruators and people with vulvas strikes many women as dehumanizing and demeaning." The words sex and gender have always been synonyms when referring to male and female. As sexually explicit images and language became more widespread in American culture during the late 20th century, gender became a more common word in reference to someone's sex. The very word gender comes from the Latin for beginning or birth. It's there from the start. No one is born with a gender identity that differs from his or her body. The English word gender comes from the same Latin word that also gives us the English words genital and gene. Our genitals are the most obvious sign of whether we are male or female. Gender is not assigned at birth. It is observed. It's recognized and acknowledged by medical staff and the parents of the baby. It is obvious in 99.9% of babies. Even if the appearance of our genitals are changed through gender reassignment surgery, there are all kinds of secondary sex characteristics that reveal whether we are male or female. Moreover, our gender is baked into our DNA. Our gender is revealed in our genes. Every cell in our body identifies us as either male or female, and this can never be changed. It's basic biology. So the way we think, the name we use, the clothing we wear, the sound of our voice, and the look of our body may all change, but we remain what we were at conception, at birth, either male or female. It's unchangeable. But politicized medical science now says that none of that matters. It's how a person feels inside that counts. So just like in Orwell's book, the language of our culture has been changed to reflect the party line. What used to be sex change operation eventually became known as gender reassignment surgery, and today it's known as gender confirmation surgery. So you can see where that goes. It's been mentioned that this bill would violate Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which guaranteed sex equality in education. That's not true. This is the language of Title IX. Quote, no person in the United States shall, based on sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. There's nothing about transgenderism in that language. The word gender is not even used. The language is sex. Title IX lists exceptions to things like fraternities and sororities, YMCA and YWCA, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, Boys State and Girl States. All of these are groups that are based on dichotomous biological sex of male or female. We know what the intent and meaning of Title IX is, despite the Biden administration's reinterpretation to include gender identity. This is a clear case of erasing the rights of girls and women for the sake of trendy politics. And I'd say it's a sad irony that Title IX has been weaponized to be used against girls and women in the 21st century. Part of the transgender confusion we see today comes from an overly narrow and rigid stereotypes of gender based in our society. Ironically, these rigid and narrow stereotypes are often embraced and perpetuated by conservative Christians who denounce transgenderism. But it's just as ironic that supporters of transgender ideology are inadvertently promoting regressive Victorian-era stereotypes of what it means to be a boy and a girl. Are you a boy who doesn't enjoy football, who is sensitive, who enjoys cooking, who appreciates beauty and art? Well, you're probably not a boy at all. You're a girl. Are you a girl who doesn't enjoy dresses, who is strong, who enjoys sports, who isn't afraid to speak her mind? Well, you're probably not a girl at all. You're a boy. If you don't fit comfortably into one of the traditional camps of cultural stereotypes created not by God, not by nature, but by man-made society, then you will be encouraged to identify yourself as transgender. It's reductionistic, it's backward, and every thoughtful and fair-minded person ought to reject such a simple-minded approach. In closing, I want to state very clearly that kids and young adults who identify as transgender are worthy of respect, of understanding, of justice, and of protection. We know that they are valuable members of our families, of our communities, of our schools, and they have a right to be protected against bullying. Bullying is an age-old problem, but it's wrong in every way, and school administrators and conscientious classmates should do all they can to prevent it. It makes it even worse when young people who are alienated from their own bodies and frustrated with culturally constructed gender norms are bullied. Perhaps even more than the average student, they need empathy, they need support in a loving and truthful way. At the same time, there are many other kids and young adults, girls and women, who are equally valuable. They too have rights, and they deserve protection. These rights and this protection include an honest application of Title IX, the integrity of female sports, and fairness during competition. For these reasons, I support HF 2416, and I urge my colleagues to vote for the bill.